and welcome back to the Unsolicited Film Reviews podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the unlikely rise of the studio slash distribution company A24. If you're a film buff, then you know what we're talking about. And if you're not a film buff, you're probably listening to the wrong podcast. But on a serious note, we lost Val Kilmer this week, uh, industry legend, obviously, and we I guess everybody kind of knew this was coming because he's been ill for a good 12 years or so, but still, it hits hard, especially since he was a stalwart of the 80s and 90s. But what was your favorite Val Kilmer film, Martin?
There's so many to go through. And when I was thinking about this question, I was like, oh, I love that one. Oh, but I like that one. I like that one. But at the end of the day, for me, this is just because it's such a big movie from my childhood. I got to go with Willow, where he
Okay,
plays
okay.
Mad Mardigan, and Willow the movie, not the horrendous TV show where they tried to reboot it a couple of years ago, and it was so unsuccessful that they've already taken it off Disney Plus. But the movie was just so much fun, and Val Kilmer in it just had this incredible like charm and humor, and his physical acting was great. It's got to be my favorite.
Yeah, for me, it was a toss up between Tombstone and The Doors,
Right.
but and I'm not a huge Oliver Stone fan, but Val Kilmer threw himself into the role of Jim Morrison in a way that he never did in any other film, really. I mean, he was Jim Morrison, and it was to the point where he played recordings of him singing as Jim Morrison to the surviving members of the Doors, and they couldn't tell the difference between him and Jim Morrison. So you know that is a tremendous feat.
That's pretty
And
incredible. Yeah.
and yeah, he was just transcendental in that role. And the fact that he didn't win any awards for that is kind of a crime.
That is very surprising. Yeah.
But yeah, great actor who will always be remembered, and he will be missed.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about today?
So today, as you mentioned off the top, we're going to talk about it's a really fun subject because we've talked about lists of movies, actors, we've had our Oscar pods, things like that. Today, we're going to talk about a specific company, and that is the distribution slash production company A24 and its unlikely rise to become one of the most important production companies in the movie industry these days.
Yeah, so we're gonna do a few back and forths. We're not gonna just do what we have done in the past couple episodes, with just 10 movies back to back to back. We're just gonna kind of delve into the origins of this company, why they're successful, how they're successful in this, world of big budget successes and bombs where studios are throwing 200 to 300 million dollars at a movie and just hoping against hope that it succeeds. And this is kind of like the little engine that could. And it's a great story. So why don't you kick us off with some of their history?
All right, so the history of A24 dates back to 2012. So again, we're not talking about a very old company here. And a guy by the name of Daniel Katz, so he was working in the film industry as a finance guy. He noticed that there was a big gap in the industry. And there was a lot of talk around that time about how the industry had become basically one of two things. Either major studio pictures, as you just talked about, 200 million dollar budgets, that kind of thing, where studios were banking all their money on these big tent poles and doing fewer and fewer films each year because of it. And it was either that or it was really small indie films. And Katz thought that there had to be some room in the middle for some other independent films and new and interesting filmmakers, and he really wanted to find a way to support them. So the story goes that he's driving in Italy outside of Rome one time, and inspiration struck, and he's like, you know what? I'm going to be the guy to provide that forum for all these new voices that otherwise might not get the chance. So he brings on two of his friends in the film industry, two guys by the name of David Finkel and John Hodges. They rent some office space in New York, and they form a distribution company. And for the name of the company, Katz decides that he's going to name it after the motorway on which he was driving in Italy when inspiration struck. So A24 was born. Uh, Now, Zach, I'm never quite sure. We don't want to treat our listeners like idiots, obviously, but we also don't want to presume too much knowledge. Should I talk very briefly about what it is a distribution company does?
Go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it's very simple, but basically, let's say you're a filmmaker, you find a production company that's willing to work with you, help finance the film, you find the director, actors, all that kind of stuff. You make yourself a great movie. Now what? You've got to show it somewhere, right? So you need to find a way to put it into theaters or put it on Netflix or Amazon and do all the marketing. And that's where the distribution companies come in. So sometimes it's just a limited agreement, right? They can make an agreement to say, we will pay you a certain amount for your film if we can have the rights to sell it in South Africa or something like that, for instance. Other times, it's a much broader deal where they basically purchase the film outright and kind of can do whatever they want with it. So that's basically what distribution companies do. And so often you'll see on in credits, you'll see so and so presents. Usually that's a clue that that's the distribution company if it's using that word presents.
Right.
So anyway, A24 thought this is a great way in. We'll start as a distribution company, work with some interesting filmmakers and help them get their movies out there. And there's a great story. So they start up. Nobody knows who they are. They're just these random three guys with an office in New York that they described as pretty terrible. And one of the first films that they wanted to try to buy, they're going around to all these film festivals, is Spring Breakers, a film
Hmm.
by Harmony Korine. And so they're like, okay, nobody knows who we are. We're going to try to impress this guy somehow. So we're going to get a gift basket that will come and we'll give our presentation. But we want to do something original. So somebody came up with the idea of making a bong, a glass bong that looked like a gun. And then put spring breakers on it. They thought, oh, this will be great. Fits in with the movie and everything. So first of all, they had to like find a glass blower or whatever to make this fucking thing for them. And then they had to go to the meeting on a plane. So they're in security at an airport. And the security guy's like, is there anything in your bag I should know about? He's like, yeah, I have this glass piece of art that looks like a gun. And they said, like the security guys just looked at them like they were total idiots. But in the end, they made it through. They got the movie. Harmony Korine agreed to sell it to them, and so that first year in 2013, they distributed movies like Spring Breakers, Spectacular Now, The Bling Ring, so Sofia Coppola, Under the Skin by Jonathan Glazer, and Enemy by a then somewhat unknown filmmaker named Denis Villeneuve. Uh, so they also started making these deals with different media outlets so people could see their things. DirecTV Cinema in 2013, they're the ones who do a lot of the pay-per-views and your where you just buy it online, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
They made a deal with Amazon Prime later that year, a deal with Apple in 2018. 2015, they decide they're going to also move into television and start producing television shows. And then 2016-17 is when they decide, you know what, we're going to get into the actual production side too, where we work with the filmmaker from the start, finance, help them make this film. And the first film they produce is a little thing called Moonlight.
Mm.
So obviously goes on to win Best Picture, but it's the craziest win ever. So Barry Jenkins, the director, he's lamented the fact in interviews that he didn't even thank them up on the stage just because of how chaotic it was when first
Oh
La La
yeah,
Land
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
announced. And then, so anyway, just since then, they've just kept growing and growing. And that's a very brief story of the history of A24.
Yeah, it's amazing how they've been able to be both brilliant businessmen and have the the artist at the core. Like, I mean, and yeah, launching so many careers. You just mentioned Denis Villeneuve, and we'll get into some others later. But yeah, it really is an incredible Cinderella story for a just distribution company that started with just a seedling of an idea.
I think exactly what you just said is exactly right. Like they had to put artists at the center because, especially when they were starting out and nobody really knew who they were, they needed to gain the trust of these guys. And so
Hmm.
the way they did that was not acting like a big studio, not acting like big money guys, but going in and saying, look, we trust you with your artistic vision of what your films are.
Yeah, they're like the anti Harvey Weinstein
Yeah, exactly.
in every conceivable way. So,
Yeah.
which is a very good thing to be.
There is actually another funny little story about Harvey Weinstein, actually, and that's with the Bling Ring, which is Sofia Coppola.
Mm.
And Harvey, I guess, called up Sofia Coppola's agent when she made that deal and was like, why is she making, who the hell are these guys? Why are they making a deal? And then Harvey Weinstein wanted to, if he couldn't get it, he wanted to at least partner with them. And
Mm.
A24 were like, no, we're good. They said no to
Wow.
Harvey Weinstein, even back then. And this was before all the stuff came out.
I did not know that, but bravo. Good for them.
Yeah.
That they will go down in history. They would be looked kindly upon in history.
Mhm.
So, in the past couple weeks, there have been there's been a new release, and there's one coming up next week as we record this. So we both went and saw Death of a Unicorn,
Mhm.
and Warfare is coming out next week by Alex Garland. And so some quick thoughts on Death of a Unicorn. What'd you think?
I really liked a lot of it. It was very funny. Will Poulter in particular, I thought was hilarious throughout. And Jenna Ortega is, obviously always watchable, and so is Paul Rudd. Like the two of them together were great. I thought the movie fell apart a little at the end, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Like I didn't love it as much as for a lot of it, I was really enjoying it, and then at the end, I don't think they really stuck the landing. But still, it was an interesting movie.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it completely delivered on its premise, which doesn't happen that many times in film, but yeah, that cast top to bottom. Richard E. Grant was fucking
Yes.
phenomenal. But you're absolutely right. Will Poulter and his shorts stole the show. We're not going to spoil anything because it's still pretty brand new in theaters. But yeah, he has a set of shorts, and even if he's wearing tactical gear, he's still showing off his legs. So yeah, and his eyebrows are just phenomenal. Like he's so good at playing stupid,
He really is. Yeah.
and he's been that way since what was the Jason we're the Millers. I should remember that
Yes,
because since
that's
that's
right.
my last name. But yeah, yeah, Paul Rudd, Jenna Ortega. But yeah, it was the tone was kind of awkward towards the third act.
Hmm.
But I'll leave it at that. But
Yeah.
definitely worth a watch. Definitely worth a
Oh yeah,
watch.
yeah, definitely go see it. Yeah, definitely recommend it.
And Warfare is another Alex Garland movie coming out next week, and it's written by an American war veteran from Iraq, so you know it's going to be authentic. And if Civil War was any indication, then the action scenes are going to be phenomenal, if nothing else.
Exactly. There were some differing opinions on and mixed reaction to Civil War. I think I liked it a little bit better than some people did, but I can still see some problems with it. But one thing that was really good, I thought, was the action in the last 20 minutes.
Sure, yeah.
And it just seemed very close up and realistic. And so it makes sense that having gained the experience from Civil War, something like this might be Alex Garland's next step. And the trailers do look very interesting, very
Hmm.
intense,
Yeah, oh
obviously.
yeah, absolutely. So we're gonna hit on some of the biggest films and TV shows from A24, and they really got off the ground in 2014 with the release of Alex Garland and his film Ex-Machina. They won their first Oscar on that one for Best Visual Effects. And I don't want to step on your toes because I know we're going to get into the awards success at a later time in this podcast, but I felt it was important to mention the point in time where they started to gain like widespread attention. And so that's Oscar Isaac, Domhnall Gleeson, and most importantly Alicia Vikander, who also got a nomination. And that was the point where I was like, okay, this little studio has really arrived. And uh it wasn't until like 2018, 2019 where I was like, okay, they're on such a hot streak that I'm gonna go seek out any project that they put out at this point. And no studio, even like Disney Pixar, has that effect on me. So they really have solidified their brand recognition. So any quick thoughts on Ex Machina?
It was a very unique. Obviously, it was a perfect movie for them because it was this high concept sci-fi movie, but because it was so contained, it didn't require a $250 million budget, right? But it still looked really good, I thought.
Hmm.
The visual effects and the story was just very interesting.
Yeah, it is ahead of its time as well because so much of the conversation around not just film industry but society as a whole is around AI and
Yeah.
are we going too far? Is are they going to become self-aware like Skynet and kill us all? And who knows? I mean, it's basically out of our control at this point because a lot of these AI softwares are smarter than the average human. So yeah, a fantastic film though, and I did a paper on it in film school and really got deep into it. And yeah, it's a lot of these films just make you think, and
Mhm.
I think that's kind of the crux of their entire, I don't know, mission statement. But so also in the same year they released Room, and another one that's very small, very contained, at least in the first half. But yeah, Brie Larson is
Contained to one room.
yeah. But yeah, Brie Larson was amazing in that.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean they just kept going. At this point, they're still just distributing. One thing I should have mentioned that sometimes distributors, when they come on, they can suggest changes, right? They can say in the agreement, look, we'll release this if you make these kind of changes. And
Sure.
again, this is where on movies like Ex Machina and Room, they weren't producers from the beginning, but they gained the trust of the filmmakers in how they handled those things. And any suggestions that they did make, they weren't coming in heavy-handed. They were very collaborative, and all the filmmakers, obviously, because they started getting more people wanting to work with them. All the filmmakers understood that they were being approached with a sense of respect and love for the movies.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's not all about the bottom line for them, which
No.
is a huge risk, but pays off when you gain the trust of all these amazing artists. And then in 2015, the one that really hooked me on the studio was The Witch, which is my favorite horror movie of all time. 10 years on now, so I'm definitely not a prisoner of the moment in this sense. The cast was amazing, and again, very small film. It takes place in what, two or three settings at the
Yeah.
most.
Most of it
And
basically in one little farmstead. Right?
yeah, and I'm wearing my Black Phillip shirt right now. If you guys are watching on YouTube, wouldst thou like to live deliciously? Black Phillip is my spirit animal. But that's the film that introduced the world to Anya Taylor-Joy,
Mhm.
and that'll be a trend in the movies we cover as well. And she was incredible. Yeah, just such a chilling movie. And for somebody that's not a huge fan of the horror genre, it really, really hooked me.
I'm exactly the same way. I'm not a big horror fan. I mean, in part because the jump scares. Yeah, I don't really need that so much. But also, I tend to find a lot of horror movies are kind of the same.
Mm,
The same sort of plot. Oh, something's been haunted because of something that happened in the past, and they got to anyway. But I do enjoy a good horror movie if they're unique and if they're
hmm.
different. And obviously, that's the kind of project that A24 seeks out. And The Witch is a perfect example. I agree. I love The Witch as well.
And then we have the Florida Project in 2017, Sean Baker, who just basically swept the Oscars. And that was all shot on an iPhone. And he also had a previous movie. I forget if that was distributed by A24 or not, but
Tangerine.
yeah,
No, I don't think
Tangerine.
that one was.
But yeah, Willem Dafoe, amazing. He's another running like kind of actor that's always in pops up in different A24 movies left and right, and he's a chameleon. He can do anything, be anybody. But yeah, Florida Project was again very unique and original story and a risk, and it didn't make any money, but and several of A24's movies have operated at a significant loss, but they've been able to survive just because they take such great gambles that when they do hit, they're massive hits. And again, they're not high, like massive budgets. They're not like a whole bunch of action scenes or explosions or anything. So, they it's a original business model, but it's starting to pay off for them for sure.
Yeah, and we're starting to see a trend here in some of these movies you're highlighting, obviously, and that's kind of the point that a lot of these projects helped really launch some of these filmmakers that are now becoming bigger and bigger names, not just the actors and the actresses, but the directors, people like Sean Baker. He had had Tangerine before that, but this one, Willem Dafoe got an Oscar nom, so it really helped bump them up. In terms of bump up Sean Baker in terms of somebody that people are paying attention to, and that's a recurring theme in everything that A24 is doing and has done.
Yeah, then we have Midsummer in 2019. Ari Aster again kind of launched his career there. Introduced us to Florence Pugh for the most part. I hadn't seen her in anything before then, and Florence Pugh and Anya Taylor-Joy are two of my favorite actresses now. And so between The Witch and Midsummer, that's not a bad track record as far as launching actresses. And yeah, again, just very chilling, very original. A horror movie that takes place entirely in daylight. I don't think
Hmm.
has ever been done before, and I always thought that was a great conceit for oh yeah, and Will Poulter was in that too. And again, he's an idiot. So
Yeah, again, yeah, just an original concept, original, interesting movie. It's the kind of thing they're going for.
yep. Then we have the Whale in 2022, which was basically the Brendan Fraser comeback. It's Darren Aronofsky, and he was an established director for what since the mid 90s or so.
Mhm.
But the fact that he's willing to come to this kind of indie art house studio, and they're of course they're willing to just take his vision and go for it, then like it's a great meeting of the minds between director and studio.
Yeah, and Aronofsky is really the kind of perfect person for A24, right?
Yeah.
He was obviously doing these kinds of movies before A24 existed, and he must have just been so excited to have somebody like this who is really going to help support him in these kind of artistic endeavors.
And then we have the Breakout, which basically everybody saw if you're a fan of critically acclaimed movies, which is everything
Everybody
everywhere.
everywhere saw.
Yeah. Yeah, everything everywhere all at once. And Michelle Yao, uh uh Ki Hui Kwan. I always have to say that name carefully. And Jamie Lee Curtis, that had won 6 Oscars. It was a massive hit, the only one to hit 100 million at that time. And again, so original. Like, never seen anything like that film in my life. Okay, then a couple years later, we have The Iron Claw, and it showed us that Zac Efron can fucking act. I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
it's a pro wrestling movie, and it also has Jeremy Al
Alan White.
yes, Alan
Yeah.
White, and it's directed by Sean Durkin. And yeah, fantastic movie. Criminally underrated, though, in my opinion, as far as not getting any award buzz whatsoever. I think the Academy and the Golden Globe voters and all those guys are just kind of averse to pro wrestling as an art form, so that might have hurt it. But anyway, great film. Check it out. Doesn't matter if you're into wrestling or not.
Yeah, it's a very sad film.
Yeah,
I mean it is about the wrestling, obviously, but it's also more just about a, a story about a family and the connection between a group of brothers.
yeah. It's more about how wrestling can destroy a family than anything else.
Or an overbearing father could destroy a family.
Yes, 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 yes. And then again, we had a year later in 2024, last year, we had The Zone of Interest by Jonathan Glazer. And I know for a fact that I speak for both of us when I say that it's probably one of the best movies that has come out in the past couple years. And we have praised it on this podcast multiple times before.
Mhm.
And you can go back in a little over a year on the Spotify feed and find out how just entranced by this movie we were. Very hard watch.
Yes.
Not one you're gonna just throw on a Sunday morning, but and the adjective you used, and I always go back to this whenever I tell anybody about this film, was that it's devastating.
Mm.
So it definitely not a casual watch, but
No,
one that you need to watch.
definitely. Yeah. Anybody who hasn't seen this movie, yeah, don't think you're just going to throw it on while you're doing other things. You need to sit down and watch and be ready to be kind of overwhelmed. But it's incredible. I think we both had it as the second best movie of 2000 and yeah of that year of last year after Oppenheimer. So of
Yeah.
2000, yeah, of 2023.
And A24 has branched out in recent years and not just doing films. They also had HBO's fourth biggest hit after Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, and The Last of Us. So all stuff based on existing IPs, and that of course is Euphoria. And while they haven't come out with a new season in I think 3 years running now,
Something like that.
it's definitely their biggest commercial hit as far as A24 TV goes. But they also did Beef, which was on Netflix, and that was in 2023. And it started out as a limited series, but they just got greenlit for a second season of it. I don't know
Right.
how they're gonna swing that, but
Yeah.
we'll see. Just be,
Victims of their own success,
yeah, there'll
maybe.
be more beef.
Yeah. Yeah, the TV stuff, I mean, Euphoria, obviously, again, another thing about their projects, it's kind of launched into the public consciousness a whole bunch of people, right? I mean,
Hmm.
obviously
Zendaya.
Zendaya, Sydney Sweeney, Zendaya was known before that, but Sydney Sweeney and a bunch of others. So it's yeah, it's another one of these things that's become very culturally relevant.
Oh, and
For
Coleman Domingo too.
yes, yeah, yeah, and the guy I cannot think of his name at the moment.
Oh,
He
Jacob Elordi.
Jacob Elordi, yes,
Yeah,
as well. That's what
for
launched him as
sure. All right, now it's time for the drink break.
well. Drink break, halftime.
Okay, so
We always got to break it up here on unsolicited film reviews so you don't get too bored of us rambling on about all these great movies. But hopefully you're getting something out of it. And hopefully, if you haven't seen some of these amazing A24 movies, you can go out and watch them after all these recommendations.
and yeah, and why not do it while enjoying one of these drinks? Okay, we have a special guest star. Gracie's asleep on the bed there.
Oh, look at that. A doggo. Every podcast needs a doggo.
All right, so this one is called Out Damn Spot. It's based on Macbeth, the Macbeth quote. But since A24 really got their start in horror and uh like sci-fi horror and that kind of genre, I thought a cocktail that looked a little bit like blood would be appropriate.
And I'm gonna try to make this along with you, Zach. So here I've got my big ice cube first.
All right, so first we're gonna need 2 ounces of vodka. Then another 2 ounces of Campari, the red Italian liqueur that will give this drink its coloring. And I discovered this cocktail while I was attending a showing of or a play of Macbeth on a rooftop bar in LA. And I thought this cocktail was so original and refreshing and also appropriate that I thought I'd bring it to you guys today because I'd never heard of it before. I don't think it's common.
No, I've never heard of it either. It's a lot of ingredients. I noticed when you sent me the recipe.
Yeah,
It's,
it's definitely the most.
it's
It's more elaborate than the Irish car bomb or
yeah.
the April Fool. Okay, then we're gonna need 2 ounces of Riesling, which is a white wine, ounce and a half of fresh lime juice.
A lot of lime juice too.
And we're gonna shake this bad boy up.
My glass is running out of room. I use such a big ice cube.
That was a massive ice cube.
It is a big ice cube. And the lime juice and how much tonic water?
Then 3 ounces. But don't want to put that until very last, or else it's gonna just fuck up the entire drink.
All right. I'm good to go.
Sorry to the listeners. Hopefully you can hear these awesome sound effects though.
Yeah, the drink's cracking. That was my can of tonic water. And cracking open all the other bottles. The only one that I actually had open already was the vodka. I had to go and get myself some Campari and Riesling for this particular drink.
All
Yeah,
right.
I'm definitely running out of space in my glass.
None of that woke up Gracie, so
Oh,
and now we taste. Damn. All right. Yeah, that's good. I haven't had that since I was in LA, and that was 7 years ago or so. So
cheers.
cheers, buddy.
Oh yeah, that
So
is
our next,
very refreshing, actually.
mm,
Yeah, not bad at all.
very much so.
There we go. Out damn spot.
All right. So next up
That's
we have you
that's it
want
for
to
unsolicited drink reviews for today.
hey, that is very fucking good. Actually, it might be better than I remember. All right. Next up we have
Yeah, let's get into the awards now
yes.
that A24 has won. Yeah, I mean, you alluded to some of them. And this is really probably the most spectacular success of A24 is
Mm,
how they've done in terms of the critics and how they've done in terms of the awards. So, in 10 years, basically, that they've had movies that were eligible for awards. To date, A24 has received 76 Oscar nominations and had 21 wins, which is pretty incredible. I mean, it obviously helps when the very first movie you produce actually wins Best Picture. But so far, they've obviously had two that have won Best Picture, Moonlight and Everything Everywhere All at Once. They've had two Best Actress wins, Brie Larson for Room, as you mentioned, and Michelle Yeoh. Two Best Actor wins, Brendan Fraser in The Whale and Adrian Brody this past year for The Brutalist, which was a film that they distributed, didn't produce, but they played a pretty big role in helping get that movie out. Two Best Screenplay awards, Moonlight and Everything Everywhere All at Once. Four Best Supporting Actor or Actress awards, and in 2023, A24 became the first independent company ever to win Best Picture, Best Director, and all four acting categories in the same year. Right, that's pretty incredible for a little company that could in less than 10 years. And in the 2024 awards, it had two films nominated for Best Picture, Past Lives and The Zone of Interest. And then on the TV side, as you mentioned, those you mentioned Euphoria and
Beef.
Beef. They're probably their two biggest hits so far. Euphoria has won 9 Emmys and a Golden Globe, and Beef has won 8 Emmys and 3 Golden Globes. So just like everywhere they turn, they're getting award success to the point that bigger bigger companies like Netflix and Amazon must just be really green with jealousy because they've been trying so hard to get that respect from the Academy that A24 seemingly just walked into by,
Yeah.
by choosing the right projects and by actually caring about the movies that they make.
Yeah, you can tell that these are people that just adore the art of film. They're not business majors, which is how, studios like Warner Brothers and Fox and Disney kind of recruit their guys because they're especially nowadays, they've all just become about the bottom line, and as a result, they've become creatively bankrupt. So,
Mhm.
someone had to come in and fill that void for people that actually love original good stories, and A24 just slid right in there and like, okay, we'll take
Yeah,
it. And but they've also performed well in some respects at the box office. They're not operating at a loss by any means. Um, Everything Everywhere All at Once was their first one to break 100 million worldwide. Civil War a year later was the second one to do that. So they're definitely building their audience and their marketability as well as still telling those original stories. No film has really come close to 100 million domestic. Everything Everywhere All at Once got 77 million domestic, but yeah, but like I said, this ain't Disney. They're in it for the love of the game, and all credit to them, especially for people that are just cinephiles. Such a blessing in a world where when you and I went to film school, we were told that you either had to make a movie for under 1 million or over 100 million. So
basically. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you just put your finger on it right there. It's all about relative to budgets, right? And so these are guys that have decided to spread their money around to a bunch of different projects, and the return they've gotten, sure, they're not making $1 billion on big tentpole films, but if each movie they're doing fairly well, maybe some operate at a bit of a loss, but then some like everything everywhere all at once 77 million, I think, on I can't remember exactly what the budget was, but it was definitely smaller than that. So
mm,
they're getting, they get a little bit of profit each time. And that's what they care about. As long as they're keeping the lights on and they keep growing, which is obviously what they're doing. So they're obviously doing well enough. All of it is how they're doing in terms of success relative to budgets. And again, they've chosen wisely.
yeah, and yeah, again, like you said, the other studios must be sitting there wringing their hands over
Yeah.
how successful these guys are, especially critically, which seems to be their main focus. And you know, Disney, Warner Brothers, Fox. I mean, Fox is owned by Disney now, of course, but these big studios are over 100 years old, and they're so stuck in their ways that it's going to be tough for them to stop making just remake after remake, sequel after sequel, because that's what they know and what they are now. So
Mhm.
it's so bloated and needs to be culled.
Well, and Fox is an interesting one because it actually did have, well, it still technically exists actually as
Oh,
part of
Searchlight.
Disney. Yeah, they did have something similar to this in Fox Searchlight. But again, for a while there, it was a good avenue for independent films and for building up these filmmakers. But it became increasingly dominated by creative decisions at the very top in the big corporation. And now that it's part of Disney, it's even more so that they're taking a heavy hand in terms of what projects they make. And so it's just not really filling the same space that it should be or that it used to be anymore.
Absolutely, yeah. And the same goes for like focus features, which was another kind
Yes.
of
Yeah.
they used to
And
be
and
just
actually one of the guys, I think it was uh I think it was David Finkel. One of the guys actually did work at Focus Features at one
mm,
point. So
mm,
they had the experience at one of these almost like mid majors, right? We're still in March Madness here, the kind of mid major company here instead of
Yeah.
the basketball power. And so they did have some experience understanding what that market was.
Yeah, and as we've already said, they have built a relationship with multiple just amazing filmmakers. And you want to start illustrating some of those?
Yeah, so that's really been, as you mentioned, that's kind of been the heart of their business, right? Is they build these great relationships with very unique and interesting filmmakers and support them. So it's not just one-off movie, okay, we'll make this movie because we're trying to get this much money out of it. It's really they build relationships and grow from there. So Alex Garland, obviously, we just talked about him having Warfare coming out, but they also distributed, as you mentioned, Ex Machina and Civil War. Robert Eggers, they distributed which they also then produced The Lighthouse. Ari Aster, they produced Hereditary, Midsummer, and Beau is Afraid. Sean Baker, again, who's now gone on to bigger and better things in a way, um, as they distributed The Florida Project and Red Rocket. Yorgos Lanthimos, despite my feelings on his movies, he's it's I love that they take chances on guys like him. And they distributed The Lobster and Killing of the Sacred Deer, the two things that really got his career off the ground. The Daniels, who are two guys named Daniels, who they first distributed Swiss Army Man, which was one of their first big ones that caught people attention. And then, of course, they produced Everything Everywhere All at Once. The Safdie brothers, they distributed Good Time, they produced Uncut Gems, and now again they're producing an upcoming movie this year called The Smashing Machine. So for them, it really is about these relationships with these filmmakers.
Yeah, and the Safdie Bros both have individual films coming out later this year. They're both co-producing each other's films,
Oh,
but
that's right. Yeah, they've got sort of not competing, but yeah, complementary movies almost. Yeah.
yeah, they're coming out a month apart, and they're both sports movies. One's about UFC, and one's about table tennis.
The UFC of paddle sports.
But yeah, and again, not to beat a dead horse, but their A24 has just been so filmmaker friendly, and they like as you said, like a lot of these guys, their entire careers aren't tied to A24. They'll go on to
Mhm.
the bigger studios so they can have a bigger budget, but there's no like bad blood between them.
No,
It's
no,
like
no.
it's
No,
like they go,
they love seeing the success of guys like Sean Baker.
yeah. And yeah, it's just so refreshing in such a cutthroat industry that's, just built intrinsically to just beat you down. The fact
So
that
true.
they have these all these freedom, and they're not like locking them into four picture deals and stuff like that, which used to be the model of studios. Like, okay, we got this star, this actor, this director, this writer, we're gonna just lock them down, make them do four or five pictures for us, and fuck them.
Yeah,
After that,
yeah.
they'll do whatever we want them to do. No, it's the exact opposite. So again, it's just so refreshing to see something like this in film these days.
Yeah, from, they've gone in the span of 13 years from making bongs to try to attract
Yeah.
filmmakers and try to get their attention to filmmakers now seek them out, right?
Yeah,
To
absolutely.
make their films because they know they're so talent friendly. I think another thing too, I mean, obviously, being in New York, I think we shouldn't understate that either because that helps with the whole independent image, right? It doesn't feel like they're part of the big Hollywood system when they're located in New York. I think that has been a kind of an advantage for them. Um, and then also, I think things are a little bit cyclical in terms of these independent studios and independent films. Obviously there were a lot of independent movies in the 70s,
Hmm.
and then the big studios took over in the 80s. And then independent films studio production companies again rose again in the 90s. And then
True.
again studios took over. And these were the guys, it just so happened, A24 were the guys that noticed the gap again and were smart enough to take advantage of it this time around.
Yeah, very, very good point.
And
So,
again, so I think they're also, sorry, I was just going to say they're also trendsetters in this way, right? Because now we're
yeah.
seeing a bunch of other companies come up that are very similar to A24. Companies like Neon, for instance,
Hmm.
who just
Honora.
produced Anora.
Yeah.
And so there are a bunch of companies now that are like, oh, okay, A24 is doing something right. We've got to get on that. Neon was formed in 2017, so a few years after A24.
Yeah. Might be doing a podcast on Neon in the
You never
not so
know.
distant future. But yeah, you're absolutely right on both points. So why have they been so successful? I think we've kind of been
Yeah, I
talking about
get. Sorry, I jumped the gun on that question, but
that.
yeah,
Yeah, I think we just about covered that.
yeah, I jumped ahead on my notes here.
And what does the future hold for this studio? We spoke briefly about Warfare, but again, that's coming out next week, and the casting looks really good. Although it does have our kind of enemy of the show, Cosmo Jarvis, who played Engine.
Maybe he'll be good in a different role. We'll
Yeah,
see.
maybe. Yeah, yeah, because it was put in a tough spot to be honest. So when I think about Shogun, and
He was. Yeah, we were
you know,
maybe a little too harsh on him.
yeah. So yeah, we will see. But I'm definitely looking forward to this one. Both my stepdad and stepbrother are were in the army, so it's gonna
Mhm.
be fun for the whole family.
Yeah, and I spent a year in Afghanistan. It has sort of from the trailers, it almost has a bit of a Black Hawk Down feel to it.
Hmm.
But I think it's going to be kind of an amped up, even more realistic 2025 version of that.
Yeah, it looks like it.
It's set in the Iraq War. But yeah, they've also got a movie coming out called Friendship that I'm very excited about because it stars Tim Robinson, our favorite from I think you should leave, and Paul Rudd. I mean, that's just those two together. That's just a great casting choice. So that should be a lot of fun. And I think uh, you read different things and you hear different things about what exactly their ambitions are at A24 and
Mm.
how big they want to get. And some people have said, look, they've got ambitions to be bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah,
And so it'll be interesting to see if they can do that, if they can keep growing, keep getting bigger budgets even for some of these films, and at the same time maintain that commitment they've had to innovative filmmaking.
it's a slippery slope.
It
Yeah,
really is.
I hope they don't the all powerful dollar. I hope that doesn't make them sell their soul. But they have a about 15-year track record now, and it seems like they know who they are. So
Yeah. Yeah. And they haven't changed yet. So
no,
hopefully they never will, even if
don't
they
don't
start.
sell out.
Exactly. And it is possible to make $100 million movie that isn't a sellout. So if that's what they want to do, hopefully they can do it.
Oh, of course it is. If you have a good fucking film, then people are gonna go see it,
Yep.
and it's really that simple. And
Hmm.
somehow the big guys haven't really caught on to that yet. But
No, because they're thinking marketing and sales first rather than
yes,
film first.
yeah,
And that's what it
100%.
seems that to this point, A24 has resisted that urge.
Yeah, absolutely. And Warfare and Friendship both look like completely original films. And it's not like Friendship doesn't look like a farce or like a traditional like Judd Apatow comedy or anything like that. It looks like there's some deep points to be made there, and I think Tim Dillon is just starting to show us the depth of range that he has. And of
Tim
course,
Robinson.
what I say, oh, Tim Dillon,
Yeah.
different comedian.
Tim Robinson.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, my bad. Um, and Paul Rudd is a much better actor than people give him credit for. So I'm stoked on Friendship.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll be there opening weekend. No question.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's A24 in a massive nutshell.
Yes. So we hope you've enjoyed that and we hope you've gotten something out of it and found it interesting because obviously we're fascinated by this company and everything that they're doing. And so if you're, as Zach says, if you're, if you're film buffs and otherwise why are you listening to us? Aside from me, maybe you just love the sonorous tones of our voices.
We do have some
Um,
very dulcet tones,
yeah, yeah,
yes.
clearly. Uh, anyway, hopefully you are also interested in film and have found this interesting.
Yeah, this is probably one of the more niche podcasts we've done,
Yes.
especially since we launched on YouTube. So yeah, we'll see what kind of feedback we get. Give us some feedback, you guys. I know you're watching out there, so
Yes. And we do tend to get feedback sometimes individually, but if you're on YouTube, as opposed to just a Spotify listener or listening to the audio, if you're on YouTube, use the comments.
yeah,
Throw us some comments under the video clips.
don't be shy. We don't bite
No.
hard. All right, so yeah, well, I'm Zach Miller, and as always, my co-host is Mr. Martin Cook.
We should mention briefly what we're going to talk about next time.
Yes, we should.
So in our next podcast, we're going to go back to more lists because you know how people love lists.
Everybody loves a list. Yes,
Everybody loves a list. And this time we're going to talk about our 10 favorite movie villains of all time. So that
and
should be a lot of fun because
a caveat is we had to narrow this down
we
after
did.
several text messages back and forth. These are going to be live action villains
Yeah.
and strictly movie villains as well. Because if we go like animated slash Disney villains, that could be a whole other podcast, as well as TV villains could be a whole other podcast. So
Yeah.
we will see you next time on the Unsolicited Film Reviews podcast. What's that
Hi,
like
everyone.
to live deliciously?